Yeah, it's been a minute, but I've been so burnt out working, having a relationship, no longer having that relationship, and just life things. But regardless, I'm here. Let's do this. So, in my absence, I have figured out I was really thinking about The Legend of Zelda. Okay? Like, I have a lot of theories for a lot of different things. Like, I did a theory video about where the direction of Star Trek Season 2, Star Trek Picard Season 2, is going. Okay? Some people don't think I'm on par with the right thinking, such as my friends. Some people don't. But uh, this Legend of Zelda theory, I think actually has merit. Okay, and thanks to a YouTube channel known as Nintendo. What was it? Nintendo World Report. Nintendo World Report TV. And I'm gonna leave a link in the description, maybe up here somewhere. I don't know, but thanks to Nintendo World Report, um, for giving me an idea of exactly how the Fallen Hero timeline actually situates. I've actually come up with the perfect theory on the whole Zelda timeline and where Breath of the Wild exists on the Legend of Zelda timeline. I know it takes place all the way in the future, but it's not a combination in all honesty. And that's what I like to get into today. So, okay, here's my theory. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild actually takes place in the Fallen Hero timeline, thousands of years and thousands of years later on in the Fallen Hero timeline. And here's my point. Like I said previously, Nintendo World Report TV made a video 2 years ago. Okay, like I said, putting the link in the description. Check it out. It's a very, very well thought out, well researched theory. Um, but here's how the Fallen Hero timeline exists. Okay, as you know, we already have the child timeline. Okay, the child timeline uh, is basically when after the end of the game, Zelda sends Link back to the past before he actually met her in the child timeline. That's by when he was a child. Therefore, creating the child timeline, where Ganon is promptly arrested, sealed for a little bit, comes back in Twilight Princess. Okay? Then you have the adult timeline, which is the remnants. It is basically from Zelda's point of view after she sends Link back in time. Link no longer exists in that timeline, so therefore, um, things go on to create the Wind Waker. Well, the Fallen Hero timeline, as many people kept thinking, happens is the way it happens is if you lose in that final battle against Ganon. Nintendo World Report made it clear. Hey, look, that's not where the Fallen Hero timeline begins. The Fallen Hero timeline actually begins where just before Link tries to pull the Master Sword as a kid. That's the Fallen Hero timeline because it's a timeline that exists um, timeline exists before the adult timeline, and it's a timeline that exists before that cannot exist due to the fact that Link went back as a child. And if you know anything about time travel, which I'm a huge fan of time travel, like, look, I've been a huge fan of time travel since I was a young kid watching Star Trek for The Voyage Home. So, of course, I've been huge on time travel. My favorite episodes of Star Trek have to do with time travel. Favorite episodes of anything have to do with time travel. If something goes wrong That's the reason why like the Android saga is such a big thing for me because well, time travel, future trunks. Just saying. Anywho, now any time travel that the player does throughout Ocarina of Time. This is obviously about Ocarina of Time. Anytime uh the player goes back in time using the Master Sword method um in Ocarina of Time, they go back to that point where Link is supposed to be quote unquote asleep, right? Well, every single and Nintendo World Report actually makes note of this. Although I feel like they kind of messed it up a little bit because, in all honesty, whenever Link goes back into that particular part of time, he's not making multiple different timelines. He's just skipping to that. If you know anything about Dragon Ball Z and how Future Trunks kind of does that whole little thing, and if you ever seen Dragon Ball Z abridged, we're talking about um, I forget what kind of paradox it is. Give me a second. Sorry, it's so simple. It's multiverse theory. It's the fact that the second you time travel, you go back to a different. You end up creating a new timeline. Okay, so here's how it goes. The three timelines are the adult timeline where Link turns into a child, where Link turns into an adult. Okay, not creating time. Then you have the child timeline where Link becomes a kid, but he goes so far back that he had never met Princess Zelda yet. So, and then you have the middle timeline where he had already met Princess Zelda. He already knows about the whole situation that's going on. Everybody knows everything, and he's already tried to pull the Master Sword. Okay, just before he pulled the Master Sword. So there's three different timelines. That middle one is the Fallen Hero timeline, and the reason why Nintendo brings up the whole fact of you know Link's final battle against Ganon, technically, if you go by the rules of everything, nobody knew about Link. Nobody, Link no longer exists in that timeline due to the events of the game. Therefore, people may have thought he fall. He did fight against Ganon and he lost soundly, as Nintendo World Report actually brings up. I'm going to give them credit where it's due. Okay, I'm even going to put like a little, hey, follow Nintendo World Report because they actually have perfect things about it. They even mentioned about the two witches, okay, that you defeat in Ocarina of Time, and you actually kill off in Ocarina of Time in an adult timeline. And they show up in the Fallen Hero timeline multiple different times, or actually just once, mainly in the Oracle, the the Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons games. However, uh, yeah, so there's that. So there's that whole little thing. And I even wrote like a little diagram. I'm going to figure out a way to edit this, but this is what I got right here. I can't really give you that whole little thing. But basically, it goes like this: Link before he meets Zelda, okay, comes back after. Here's how it goes: we get Link before he meets Zelda, pulls the Master Sword. He creates that 7 year slumber, and you know Link is in the future, the adult. Okay. Then there's another switch after he pulls the Master Sword where he's coming back to, or going back and forth to the future and to the, you know, that time after he pulled the Master Sword and he's doing his little thing where he needs to do to like help out the future situation. Then you have him going back after the whole defeating Ganondorf and all that stuff. So that's the first part of this timeline theory. So here's the second part. Okay, so if you know where each things are, you now know how the Fallen Hero timeline exists. It's that little middle ground, you know, a little play area that Link is playing through, that the player is playing through in Ocarina of Time. That's the Fallen Hero timeline, the young Link timeline. Okay, that did not stop Ganondorf ahead of time as a child timeline it works, and who did not become an adult and defeat Ganondorf. Okay, now Ganondorf. The second part of this whole timeline theory is about Ganondorf and the connection of Ganon and all that stuff. If you notice, throughout all the games Ganondorf actually appears in, the main Ganondorf, the humanoid Ganondorf, which we have definitive proof that there is a difference between humanoid Ganondorf and uh, the beast Ganondorf, the dark beast Ganondorf, or Calamity Ganon, or Dark Beast Ganon, I'm sorry. Um, Ganondorf, in all the games that feature humanoid Ganondorf, he transforms into a Dark Beast Ganon, correct? Okay? And I'm pretty sure Nintendo, um, even though they're not thinking about it clearly, they have a reason why. Because Ganon does not exist before Ganondorf. Have you noticed that? I mean, you have Demise, you have Vadi, you have all of them, but Ganon does not exist before Ganondorf. Okay, you see Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time, and that's supposedly the first time Ganondorf or Ganon actually show up in the timeline. Correct? Okay, so let's look at the child timeline. Of course, we had Majora's Mask, but let's really talk about Twilight Princess. In Twilight Princess, okay, Link of Twilight Princess, the descendant of the Link from Ocarina of Time, the hero of time, the hero of Twilight, faces off against Ganondorf. Correct? So, faces off against Ganondorf. Ganondorf turns into Dark Beast Ganon. He decides during this whole battle, he killed the hero of Twilight, actually kills Ganondorf. Like kills him. Like there's a little scene where uh Ganondorf sees Zant, does this little crack of the side, crack of his head, and Ganondorf is like loses the Twilight of Power and automatically dies. Correct? So in that world, Ganondorf is gone. Ganondorf is dead. He is completely dead. He didn't die as Dark Beast Ganon. Dark Beast Ganon. I mean, we know that Dark Beast Ganon only exists due to Ganondorf. Ganondorf is dead. Then let's talk about the adult timeline. All the way in Wind Waker. Wind Waker. Guess what happens to Ganondorf? I think he does transform into Dark Beast Ganon. I could be wrong. I had to look at Wind Waker all over again. But let's just say this: Ganondorf gets killed. He doesn't just get killed. He gets a sword straight to the fucking. He gets a sword straight to his head. He can't use the Triforce of Power to like revive himself. Why? Because they just use the Triforce, the full Triforce. Triforce of Power, Triforce of Courage, and the Triforce of Wisdom all were used by the King of Red Lions uh, to wash Hyrule away again. Ganondorf gets freaking stabbed right in the freaking middle of his head. Right in his freaking forehead, right? Because of the stone. He's dead. He gets washed over. He's gone. Okay? In fact, later on in that same timeline, where we have the spirit tracks and all that stuff, Ganon does not exist anymore. There's a whole new evil. And they're in a whole different Hyrule. Way away from the original Hyrule. So, yeah. How do you expect for anything, for Breath of the Wild to even exist in the adult timeline? It's a whole different Hyrule. It's different. It's in a whole other land. Just saying. So now we have the Fallen Hero timeline. Okay. Now in the Fallen Hero timeline, we see Ganon every single in most of all the Fallen Hero timeline games. He gets revived over and over again. Now, yes, at one point the Triforce was taken away from Ganon. Okay, he did end up gaining back the power of the Triforce of Power somehow. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but my theory is okay. In the Fallen Hero timeline, Ganon is able to rule with an Iron Fist uncontested for a good long period of time. Maybe Ganondorf figured out how to transform into Dark Beast Ganon, and then he figured out a way to like separate his the the Dark Beast Ganon form from his original body. Okay, this is going to be some theories for also Breath of the Wild too, just so you know. Figured out a way to live on forever by separating his Dark Beast half from his human half, so that whenever his Dark Beast half, thanks to his ability to use it with the Triforce of Power and the Triforce in general, whenever his Dark Beast body is destroyed, it will revive his human half and allow him to reset his Dark Beast Ganon body. Because if you notice, the Dark Beast Ganon in the other games in Ocarina of Time, uh, uh, Twilight Princess, and possibly Wind Waker. Like I said, I gotta do more research on that. It's more of a mindless little thing. It's just does its thing. Okay? Whereas Dark Beast Ganon in the Fallen Hero timeline seems to have a little bit more intelligence, so to speak. So my theory is that every single time Dark Beast Ganon in the Fallen Hero timeline is destroyed by a descendant or another reincarnation of the hero, that uh, Ganondorf reawakens, um, sets his new Dark Beast body up again to combat potential heroes again, stronger than before, stronger than ever. And at one point throughout that entire timeline, throughout the years and years and years, and possibly thousands of years of reincarnations that he's gone through, he finally hits the jackpot with Calamity Ganon. Because Calamity Ganon, if you notice, he could never actually be destroyed. He could only be sealed a couple of times by the royal family. So, here we go. Breath of the Wild, here we go. Before Breath of the Wild starts, 100 years, if I remember correctly, 100 years before Breath of the Wild starts, they have that whole situation
Standing
with.
by.
Oh, goodness. Sorry about that. They have that whole situation. There we go. They have that whole situation of uh, Ganon being so powerful that he's able to infect other things, other creatures, right? Okay. He defeats Link, the hero of the wild. Okay. He he defeats Link almost, and Zelda is the one to seal him, but she also gets sealed with him. Okay. She has the Triforce of Wisdom somehow. Ganon has the Triforce of Power. We don't know about the Triforce of Courage. I think Link has it, but I don't think he does at the same time. Okay? 100 years later, after Link is restored, resurrected, whatever you want to call it, he goes and fights Calamity Ganon again. He destroys Calamity Ganon, even in his Dark Beast Ganon form. Now we have trailers for the Breath of the Wild 2. And what do we see? Something that looks like a humanoid, decrepit, old humanoid body of Ganondorf, and it seems like he's reawakening. Coincidence? I think not. All right, so that's my theory. Okay, if Ganon is defeated, Ganondorf can still exist. So why does it make sense? Well, oh yeah, I just pretty much went through that entire thing. Needless to say, Breath of the Wild can only exist in the Fallen Hero timeline. In the Fallen Hero timeline, when you really think about everything very clearly, is the timeline that has the most straight arrow path. Why? Because it's the only timeline that's the original timeline. Think about it. Okay, let's say we go from Skyward Sword all the way to what happens with Ocarina of Time. That's normal. That's cool. That's perfectly done, right? Okay, now we have Ocarina of Time. All the events that take place up into Link actually trying to pull the Master Sword and end up in his 7 year slumber go along normally. That's the original timeline. Then Link happens to wake up 7 years later, outside of time in the Sacred Realm, correct? That's the adult timeline. That's where Link can actually possibly defeat Ganondorf, and he does. He defeats Ganondorf. They seal him. Wind Waker happens. That's the split. He goes back in time. Zelda sends us back in time to relive his childhood. Child timeline. Another split. Things that never happened before. You get what I'm saying? Therefore, Falling Hero timeline is the only timeline that's real. That's the and Breath of the Wild is technically Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild 2 possibly are the ones where the curse is finally over. The curse of the hero, the goddess made human, Hylia, Zelda, the goddess's chosen hero, Link, and the spirit of vengeance, Demise, aka now Ganon or Ganondorf. They're the three things that keep popping up over and over again. Demise has Ganondorf as his final and all be all. And Calamity Ganon being as powerful as he was, the point where he could keep resurrecting monsters. Hey, that sounds like Demise at his ultimate level. This is where the curse finally ends. This is where the whole resurrection stuff finally ends. Breath of the Wild 2. That's my theory. Okay? So, say what you will. Hopefully, you like the video. Hopefully, I'll make a better video with better, get some editing going on. But until then, you guys have a great night. Toodaloo.